Hi, everybody. My name is Lynn Tremonti, and I'm with the Ohio Immigrant Alliance. We have been working with you on Reunite US and other advocacy to try to get the Biden administration to allow more deported people to come home. We have a project that we're working on, and we wanted to get your input and information and feedback from you about the project. So we're going to hear from two different people today. The first is Miriam C., who I think many of you know, but I'll let her take it away.
Thank you, Lynn. Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam C., and I am with the Ohio Immigrant Alliance. I'm so happy to be here today with Lynn and Suma. So like Lynn said, we have an amazing project that we are working on, and the project is about you guys. It's based on the amazing stories and interviews that we had with you guys almost 2 years ago now, Reunite US. Those amazing stories are going to be used to create like a book. It's going to be online. I say a book because when it's going to be on the internet, it's going to look like a book. But it will also include all your stories. And the goal is to make sure we keep working towards the advocacy, so the Biden administration and the government finally see that work needs to be done for people who were deported. But I will kick it back to Lynn so she can give us more information about what this amazing project is.
Yes, thank you, Miriam. So I want to make sure everybody knows we are not using your names. We are not, doing anything where people could say, oh, I know who that person is. That person is John. And if you do see names in the report or the book, it's because those are people who were in the news media. And so their names were used. So there's a combination in this book of just what you told Miriam in terms of the impacts of your deportation on you and your loved ones, and then information from news articles and scientific studies. And Suma will talk more about that. But please know that we are not using any information about you in any way connected to your name or your family's names or where you live or anything where you would be put at risk. What we are doing is giving just very small examples from things that you told her. For example, maybe you have struggled to find a job where you are living now. That's a very common experience for people who are deported. So we mentioned that people have had problems getting work in the report. So please feel comfortable that we're taking everything that you said and making it not be something that somebody could say was directly about you, but we're using the information you gave us that you've asked us to tell the Biden administration. We're putting that out there in this book because you have said that you want your voices to be heard. So from that, we'll go over to Suma. Suma is a great person. She works for a national policy organization based in Washington, D.C. She's been to Ohio and met with some family members of people who were deported. And she is a researcher. So she has a very academic university background. So she has been able to go through other research and bring some scientific information to the book. So if we have an example of saying that you've had a hard time finding a job, Suma will say, and therefore, the research shows that families are becoming impoverished or having to go into poverty because the person that was making money was deported. So Suma plays this important role. And I'll just stop there and let Suma take it over.
Well, the first thing I want to say is thank you to Lynn and Miriam for partnering with me, for trusting me with this information. Thank you to all of you for sharing your stories. And I also want to mention that my parents are also immigrants. They came from India in the 70s. My sister and I were born in Chicago. We have lived here our whole lives, and we really do identify with the immigrant experience. That being said, we had a very privileged experience of immigration, and I wish that other immigrants can have that experience as well. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the different sections in this online book that we are planning. And I also want to ask afterwards for some feedback on how to improve it, what else we need to add to it, and especially what you want the public as well as policymakers in Washington, D.C. to know about your stories and your families. So we are spotlighting your stories. We are telling your stories without identifying who you are or your families, but we are gathering some major themes, like what has been the impact on your family, financially, emotionally, what has been the impact on you personally since you have left the country. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. We'll also be writing about what other studies and research has existed about people who have been deported and what has happened to their families. And there's a lot of stories from your group that illustrate and strengthen that research. What is unique about stories from your group is that there isn't a lot of research right now about people from African origin or Black immigrants. And we're hoping that your stories can illuminate those experiences. We also see that there isn't a lot of research out there on the impact of deportation or leaving the US on people who have left themselves. There is a lot of information about the remaining family members and their children, but not on the deported person themselves and how they are doing in the countries that they have left to. So that is very unique and important contribution that your stories are making in the greater conversation about deportation and its impact on families and the people who have been deported. So that is basically what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the research, the impact on children, the impact on spouses, the impact on Black immigrants, and the impact on deportation on the person who has been deported. We're going to end the online book with a set of recommendations for policymakers, and that includes the Biden administration, as well as congressmen in the Senate and the House. And we're going to come up with a set of very concrete action steps. This is going to be very technical. We're going to be consulting a lot of lawyers and other policy experts to develop this section. Really, we want to develop a roadmap that makes it as easy as possible for policymakers to take your stories and take action, to listen to your stories and say, oh, this is one thing we can do to make people's lives easier. We really want to lay it out very clearly for everyone. We also will have a set of recommendations for media and funders and for the general public in terms of listening to these stories, reporting on stories, and making sure that we are centering your experiences, the experiences of people who are directly impacted by the US immigration system, by its inhumanity, by its criminalization of existence for immigrants. We really want to make sure that people understand how unjust the system truly is. And your stories are truly going to help us tell people how unjust this system is and why and how they can change it. So what we'd like to know from you is, how can we make sure your stories are told accurately? And what are the biggest things you want us to tell policymakers? What do you want us to tell the media? What do you want the general public to know about your experiences? And how can things change for the better? Thank you. And I'm going to kick it back to Lynn.
Thank you so much, Suma. So you can send us a WhatsApp voice note in the Reunite US chat with anything you want us to know. So just to repeat the questions, we want to know, what is your message to the Biden administration? What do you want Congress to do? What is your message to the general public? Anything that you want to be heard, you want people to hear from you as a deported person about you and your life and what you think the future should be and what needs to change. So feel free to send us that feedback in WhatsApp. If you would like to have a photo of you or your family or somebody included in the report, we are welcome. We're excited to receive photos from you that we can use both in the report or the book and on the website reunite.us, because we've heard from many of you that you want to be seen. You don't feel like your experiences are being talked about in the media and by the policymakers. So we want them to see you, hear you, learn about you, and care about you like we do. So with that, I think we'll stop there. We are going to have some versions of this available in other languages. And thank you so much for participating in Reunite US and for being willing to rethink and talk about some of the horrible things that have happened to you with a sense of hope that maybe together we can make some change and have things become better for you.
Lynn, I had a quick question that I think others might be wondering. Will the voice messages people send in remain private, or will they be shared publicly?
We will keep your messages private unless you tell us that you want it to be used publicly. And even if we use it publicly, we don't have to use your real name. But just as if you send us anything, we will assume it's private. We're not going to use your name. We're not going to use your voice in the book. However, if you want your voice in the book, you want to be heard that way, you are allowed to. You just have to tell us. Thank you, Suma. Thanks, everybody. Bye.